Hey everyone, welcome back. Today I have a message for you which has been inspired by some very, very meaningful conversations that I've had over the last couple of days. And particularly a conversation that I had with my beautiful granny. She's just turned 95, back in end of August last year. And she is an incredible woman. I've mentioned her a few times on several of my Facebook lives. She was a survivor of the Holocaust. Unfortunately, her parents didn't make it. She was 13 years old when she fled Nazi Germany. And she has been on an incredible journey in her life and suffered some of the most traumatic experiences I've ever heard of, and hope that none of us have to experience. But she is one of the most exceptional souls that I have ever met in my life, and had the pleasure of having her she actually took my mum to the hospital to have me back when I was born, and my dad was overseas and not there. And you know, my granny, I've mentioned to you guys, particularly if you're in my inner circle communities, you probably hear more of my personal development journey around my relationship with my granny, and also several of my family members, because they can be the greatest teachers. My relationship with my granny has been one of the biggest relationships for my own personal empowerment and development. It hasn't been an easy relationship. It's been one that has consistently given me opportunities to grow and develop in the ways that I most need to personally. And I want to actually bring in this invitation. I want you guys to, I'd love to hear from you guys actually. Like, if you have a particular relationship in your life that allows for your growth, maybe it's not exactly how you would ideally want it, but because it's not perfect, it actually gives you amazing kind of the terrain that's necessary, the most, for you to actually grow and develop. So I'd love to hear from you guys. If a person in your family or a friend or somebody in your life, you can kind of equate to maybe challenging yet super rewarding because you grow and develop through it. Oftentimes, for most of us, it's our intimate relationship that tends to be the most challenging, but also definitely our relationship with our mother or our father tend to be huge for us as well. So I'd love to hear from you guys, because I'm going to share with you on today's topic, why I've decided I want to present on today's topic, why I think it'll be valuable for you to stay tuned and get some value from. And that brings us to introducing the title. And please do share this message if you do find it of value. That's such a gift. So, perpetual positivity blocks soul connection. Now, what do I mean by that? So basically, what I want to talk to you guys about, it's been brought on by a conversation that I had just last night. And also, and it was with my beautiful granny, I spent a few hours with her just yesterday. And also it's related to some conversations that I've been having with the sessions that I've been having, that I've been giving to you guys for free, and getting to meet so many amazing souls from across the globe, which is super fun. And also, I have also been having some conversations with some clients of mine on this same topic. And of course, you guys know that I absolutely love being able to, just study all human beings that I get to watch near or from afar. And it's very much in relationship to all of that stuff right now. So, again, drop me some comments. Let me know where in the world you're tuning in from, and we can definitely dive into this conversation. So, what happened for me, and actually got sparked, I didn't realize that I wanted to talk about this until this morning, when I had a really great conversation with an incredible soul over in Europe. And it was very inspiring for me to connect with somebody who's been following my messages for a while, but I had never really met them, personally. So that was great. And basically, they brought up something that was really in relationship to what I want to talk to you guys about today, because of the experience that I had yesterday with my granny. So for those of you who haven't heard me talk about this relationship before, basically I've had some challenges with my relationship with my granny, not because she's not the most phenomenal woman. I've probably one of the most phenomenal women that I've ever met, and her journey is so fascinating and interesting. But there was a big part of me that was challenged because I didn't feel like she ever understood me or what I'm all about, right? And in fact, she'd be one of the most challenging people in terms of the path that I'm on and the work that I do and the relationships that I build, because she just doesn't get it, because she's not from the same era, and she has tried to get it, but it's been kind of challenging. And that's been perfect for me in order to grow myself in the ways that I most need to grow myself, in terms of not needing anybody externally from me to accept me or get me, for me to feel okay within myself, right? And so for that, I can look at, it's one of those relationships that oftentimes, if we got what we thought we really wanted, it would actually rob us from the opportunity to grow and develop in the ways that we actually most need to be our most empowered individuals, right? And so why I talk about that is because last night I had an amazing breakthrough in my level of connection with my beautiful granny. And I want to share this with you, and I hope that it helps you to see where you might be being perpetually positive, right? And thinking that that's the best thing that you could be. Of course, I'm going to choose positivity and I'm not going to be negative and all that stuff. But what I want to help you to see, hopefully, in the message that I share today, is I would love for you to see how potentially your perpetual positivity, right? Being positive, positive, positive all the time, never talking about the negative, never experiencing or expressing those darker, more negative side of your emotions or your fears or your concerns, how that could actually be costing you a real soul connection. And that's what I have actually felt with my granny, right? Over the last few years, it's kind of been up and down. And I had perceived it to be in relation to whatever her mood was, right? Like if she was going to be in a loving mood, then I felt like we were going to get the connection. If she was not in the greatest moods, I felt like that could rob us the connection, and it would be like a lot of energy being there, right? And basically what happened yesterday was, in the morning, I had a group session with my Limitless Potential Academy, amazing inner circle, and we have very deep conversations, and all of us share very openly and authentically about our real life experiences. And I've shared over time, my granny, and she actually wrote this book about her journey through escaping Nazi Germany when she was 13 years old. And it's basically a story of hope and humanity in times of despair. And one of my amazing inner circle students just yesterday, he asked me, he said, "Where can I get a copy of your granny's book?" And I said, "Oh, I'd love that to be possible, but she just published privately, right? And she just published for her family members. And really the basic idea for her writing her history in her book was for her great-great-great-great-grandchildren, right? So that she could leave her legacy and her connection to her family well beyond, her leaving physically." And so basically, they said, "Oh, I'd love for you to interview your granny," right? Because she's got such a fascinating, interesting story, and she's a highly intelligent woman who she's very worldly, and I've always wanted to do that. And when I saw her yesterday, I actually had a conversation with her, and I said, I just told her what happened. And I said, some of my amazing students, they'd love to be able to read your book. They would love to have me interview you and get to dive into your wisdom more. And she actually started opening up more, right? And she actually started telling me some very, very deep stories about her history that she actually didn't put in the book. And she started telling me these very personal, very meaningful situations that occurred, like the big challenges that she was faced with. And she kept saying to me, oh, this is something I didn't put in the book. I chose not to put in the book. And I asked her and I said, why didn't you put it in the book? Like, why did you leave these stories out, right? And one of the stories was basically, I asked her, you know, when she was 13 years old, she was, you know, put on a train from Berlin to get her out of the country, right? From her parents, right? So that she wouldn't be involved in a concentration camp or lose her life in whatever way. And basically I asked her, I said, Granny, what were the last things that your parents said to you? Like when they knew they had to send you off, and that could be the last time they ever saw you. And she expressed to me, you know, she said her dad, like he gave her this hug that, you know, she'd never had a bigger hug from him before. It was like a very meaningful, different moment in her life as a 13-year-old girl. And she said that because, you know, her father was a very high up judge and well respected in the community and had been in the military and, you know, was very well respected with what his accomplishments were. He thought that was going to save him and his family. But when the Nazis came through, he was Jewish, and so they stripped him of all of his assets, all of his belongings, emptied the bank accounts and everything. And at the time where they had this opportunity to get my granny out of the country when she was 13 years old, basically they couldn't even afford for both of them to take my granny to the station in Berlin and have her be sent off. And they could only afford for one of them to take my granny. And so, you know, that's why her dad gave her this big, huge hug, right? And that was the last moment she ever saw him. And her mum was able to take her to this station in Berlin. And my granny and I like cried together as she told me this story last night, because she expressed like her mum putting her on the train, you know, and her mum chasing after the train, right? Chasing after the train, like waving goodbye, knowing that that was the last time she was ever going to be able to see her daughter, right? Her daughters actually, but her other sister was older and in a different situation. I think she'd already left previously. And yeah, that's right. And then basically that just sharing of that story, right? Like she didn't put that stuff in the book. And to me, that's just like, that's the most meaningful thing. That's what I want to know about her. That's what I want to know about her journey, right? I want to know what she was experiencing. I want to see her emotional. And she did. Like I don't think I've ever seen my granny cry before. And she did last night, right? And we cried together as she shared not only that story, but some very dark stories, right? About the truth and the other side of what was going on, and her having to go to a foster home in England where she didn't even speak English, right? And she had to learn it all and not ever know what happened to her parents and all this sort of stuff, right? And basically she put all the positive stuff in this book that I have here, but she left out all the so-called negative stuff, right? And I asked her and I said, Granny, have you ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl? And she said, no, I haven't. And I also had this book and I said, what about this one? With The Happiest Man on Earth by Eddie Jacques, right? Which is a more recent book that I've connected with. Or there's a movie and it's called Life is Beautiful, and it's about that time in history. And she hadn't heard of any of those, and she wouldn't have wanted to, right? Because for her, what saved her life and allowed her to deal with the life and the traumas that she's experienced, even having her eldest son pass away at age 15 from cystic fibrosis, and having to watch that, and having her husband leave her because he couldn't cope with that. And all sorts of, some of the most traumatic experiences you could think of going on. What saved my granny and allowed her to survive has been perpetual positivity. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to look at that. I'm not going to focus on that. I'm just going to focus on the good, right? The positive, right? And I'm not even going to, when I tell my history, I'm going to leave all the dark stuff out. I'm just going to share the positivity. I can see how that has allowed a human being to survive through incredibly traumatic experiences, right? But what it's also cost is soul connection. And I got to experience some of that last night, right? And I'd like a lot more of that, right? That's meaningful to me. I want to know all of who you are. The light, the dark, the everything, the full emotional expression, right? I don't want to just see half of you, because there's such a disconnection in that. It's almost an agitation when people are perpetually positive and you don't get to see any other side, right? And oftentimes when people are perpetually positive, the darkness seeps out, right, in these uncontrollable ways or less emotionally intelligent ways, right? So it's, you're not ever free of it, right? So it's whether you consciously choose to share or it's going to outburst in different ways. And that usually costs connection, right? But what I could see, and what was so meaningful to me yesterday, is seeing what was behind the positive story. It can be likened to like how people say that, oh, don't be on Facebook because it's just the positive highlight reel. It's the same thing. It's like, okay, you can share that beautiful side of your life, and I want to hear all about that too. But there's just a disconnection. Like it's blocking a soul connection when you don't get to see the other side, right? And so that's what I wanted to kind of highlight for you guys today. Like perpetual positivity, it blocks our soul connection. You want to be positive. You want to share all the great stuff in your life and the things that you're excited about and you're passionate about, but not without all the things that terrify you, all the things that your darker emotions, like the full spectrum of who you are, like the true authentic journey that you're on. Like we need all of it, right? If we want to have a soul connection. And I've been talking to so this amazing human being that I got to connect with this morning on one of my free sessions, and also some other human beings I've been speaking to recently, and this beautiful connection that a lot of them have had from learning from Tony Robbins, and myself included, right? I wouldn't be where I am today without being introduced to Tony Robbins in the world of personal development. And but basically they struggle with the same challenge that I used to, and that I'm still growing in my awareness of, right? We're always spiraling up, but I see this pattern, and it's born from perpetual positivity. It's born from you get to choose your emotional state. That's part of the development journey. You have to learn that you are in control of how you show up emotionally. And that's one of the greatest assets of learning down the path of Tony Robbins' models of and frameworks, right? You want to be able to choose your emotional state. But once you've built that muscle, it seems counterproductive, right? Because that mindset is positive, 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 always looking to the future. Forget about the past and choose your emotional states. And if you have a dark, negative emotion, don't feel that. Like feel something you get to choose. Be grateful, right? That's all a stage of development, which is absolutely necessary. But then once you've learnt that, you've got to transcend it, and you transcend it in a way that feels very counterproductive. And that counterproductive way is actually doing the opposite to what you've been doing to build that muscle. And the opposite is actually going into the darkness, is actually going into the pain, the trauma, the experiences that have molded your identity as to who you think you are, right? And until we do that work, we get perpetually positive like we're in a hamster wheel, right? And we feel like we're doing what they say to do, but like, why do I not feel like I'm progressing? Why are my relationships breaking down? Why am I not getting where I want to get to? Why do I feel like a beautiful Easter egg that's hollow on the inside? Why do I feel like it looks like I'm living a great life, but actually I'm dead inside? And that is because you've disconnected from a big half of who you are, which is the whole dark spectrum of the human emotions that you've deemed negative and you've cut out and disidentified from. And like the story of my granny, I see it. It's survival. Maybe she wouldn't have survived if she had have gone into the darker stuff earlier on. But you're never going to thrive if you only live as a half self, right? And so that's the piece. That's what we really need to look at. We need to go, yes, I need to build the muscle to be able to choose my emotional state, to be able to access and choose to be positive as I see fit. But you cannot negate the darkness, the full negative emotional spectrum, your past traumas that haven't been healed. You can't negate and skip over that stuff and expect to be fulfilled. Expect to have soul level connections. Expect to be creating and designing a life that you're truly fulfilled by and inspired by. That won't happen, and it's costing you soul level connection in your life. Until you break the cycle of your need to be perpetually positive to survive, and you realize that you need to be the full spectrum of who you are in order to thrive, right? So that's my message for you guys. And I speak to so many of you who are always looking for high level connection, right? You don't want to just have like surface level connection where you don't feel like you can be all of who you are and you got to kind of mold yourself. You want the depth, you want the realness, you want to be all of who you are, right? You want to love fully and be loved fully. And you can't be that trying to survive with perpetual positivity. You need to be willing and courageous enough to thrive in the expression of all of who you are, and nobody else outside of you is going to make that okay for you, okay? You are the only one who's going to do that, and you need to look at yourself as a terrain that you want to make as healthy as possible. So whatever you plant in life is exactly what you want growing, right? And unless you look at the terrain and you pull out the weeds and you look at it and you nurture it from the inside out, you're going to be creating outside here like all this different stuff that you didn't really want, right? And your darkness is going to come out, right? Some way, shape or form. If you don't look after and nurture your terrain, you're going to have a whole lot of weeds out there, right? That's the remnants of the darkness that you didn't heal, you didn't nurture. And so my challenge to you guys from such a loving and compassionate place is to please take 100% responsibility for your life and your fulfillment, and do not waste your potential connections. Like, don't keep them on the surface. Don't stay stuck because you're in survival mode. Know that there's a point where you can transition from that and you can get to have soul level connection. And my granny's 95 years old. First time I saw her cry yesterday, and she really opened up and she really shared something really true and deep and dark. And because of that, we're able to transcend just a surface level connection that's draining and actually access a whole lot more depth. And it doesn't matter that she's 95. You're never too old to make a shift into a soul level connection by the full expression of who you are, right? So stop perpetual positivity and have the courage to express all of who you are, all right? So I went on a few tangents there. I hope me sharing that was of value to you. I'd love to hear from you what resonated with you, and definitely your experiences, your wisdom to share on this topic. Because, this to me, there's nothing more important than it. Like, I truly do believe that every single human being has the same purpose in life, however you want to look at it and however you want to see it or be conscious of it or not. But we are here, to be who we actually are. We're here to share our unique gifts, you know, to be in alignment with what's authentic to us. We're here to connect deeply with others. That means the full spectrum, you know, not just hanging out on the surface with perpetual positivity, right? We want all the depth. And we're here to actually feel like our lives matter, to contribute, right? With purpose and create meaning and design the life that is authentically inspired, right? Not to the expectations of others. So let me dive in and check in with you guys. But I've got Javier in the house and Robert. Hello, Javier from San Diego. Always good to see you, my friend. And Ahmed's here, and Christy and Alice and Jerry and Shah. And Jared is from Los Angeles. Awesome to have you. And Alice, hi, good morning. Love it. Nice to see your training like it looks. Thank you for watching this. Oh, you are so welcome, Alice. I'm grateful that you like this message and grateful to have you live. And Jared's here, and Scott and Edeline and Jerry from work in Quebec City. Always great to have you live, my friend. And awesome and beautiful story. I'm grateful that that resonated with you. And Chloe's here as well. And Edeline, shouting out to you right now. And would love to hear your question, love to support you guys in any way that I can, so drop it below. And Dennis, heartbreaking so far, thank you for sharing. Yeah, it was a heartbreaking story, but you know, like, our hearts need to break in order to reconnect, you know, like, just because something feels sad doesn't mean that it's bad, right? Like, in actual fact, it wasn't until I started owning a deep sadness that I've been carrying around all my life, you know, that I was able to access joy at a whole new level, right? So all of our negative emotions are connected to our positive ones, right? They're all in a polarity, a mirroring of opposites. And to the extent that you can really feel into one, it will predict your ability to feel into the other. And anything that you repress, anything negative that you repress, it actually suppresses the positive side of that as well. So really important to think about, if you want to experience the highest heights of joy, you need to be able to access the lowest lows of sadness, right? That's just how our emotions work. So love that. And Jerry, your grandparents moved from Germany to the US. Yeah. Oh, cool. So yeah, so at that time, my granny moved to England, and then eventually ended up here in Australia. And my and her older sister actually ended up in Chicago in the US. So yeah, crazy time. And Dennis, I found with my 85-year-old parents, they will talk if I ask. After this chat, I'm asking more with tears. Thank you. Oh, Dennis, that touches my heart so much. And that's a thing, you know, like, ask people questions, right? Go deep. And, you know, exactly right. And I'm so grateful that this has inspired you to go deeper with your beautiful parents, because that's what matters, you know, the sharing of experiences with authenticity and depth, you know, all of it. So I love that, Dennis. Thanks so much for sharing that. And Parveen is here, and Vanessa, good to see you, beautiful soul. And Joe's here, and Dennis, yes, awesome, love it. And Daryl is here as well from the Great White North. Always good to see you, my friend. And Barry, wow, powerful story. God bless your grandmother. An amazing story. Great message today, as usual. Barry from Canada. Thank you so much, Barry. And always great to have you here. And from beautiful Canada, one of my favorite countries in the world. And yeah, thank you so much for resonating with that story. I'm grateful. And Wayne is here as well. So I hope this message has served you guys. I hope it helps you to just reflect on your own life about where is it that you're just operating in this perpetual positivity, and ask yourself, like, what have I been trying to survive? Like, how is this perpetual positivity serving me, right? Or served me? And why am I ready now to not have to be perpetually positive all the time in order to feel like I can survive? What is it costing me if I just show only half of who I am? How could my relationships be different if I was to fully be transparent and open to, like, the full spectrum of who I am? you know, not just the perpetually positive side, you know, and how could that deepen those connections? And like I just shared with that story, you know, I'm so grateful for just like the few hours I spent with my granny last night, for all the time we've spent together where it's been perpetually positive, but not really, like, it's been lacking that soul connection. I feel like that made up for so much of that, like, and it was so meaningful to me. And I invite all of us to be on both sides of that equation. Like Dennis said, ask the questions, go deep with the people in your life, you know, not just all the perpetually positive stuff. And on my granny side of that conversation, open up and share. You know, it's not about survival, right? It's about soul connection. And the only way to soul connection is to share all aspects of who you are. All right, so hope that serves you. And awesome. And Data is in the house. Cool. I bet that Granny is going to see that experience of looking at the past with a whole new perspective. Thanks to you and your deeply connected experience together. Well, that is super sweet. And, you know, I hope so. And, you know, I have no attachment to it, because that's the other thing, right? That's been part of my challenge, has been really, you know, attached to the outcome of our connection, my connection with my granny. I've wanted it to be so soul deep, and I felt like I was missing that, and I felt helpless to change it. And I love, like, that's my ideal. I hope that is the reality, you know, and that it did help maybe my granny to heal a little bit by talking about it, right? By sharing about it, by having me reflect compassion for it, you know, because that in and of itself is very healing. And I'm not attached to the outcome. Maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't, but I'm just grateful for that moment. And so I love those beautiful words of wisdom. And Thomas is here as well. Good stuff. Grateful that this is resonating with you. And Bill's in the house. Much love, my friend. And Best, hi sister, hey to you. So that's my message for you guys. Thank you again for joining me live. Thank you so much for your comments and your contributions, and, you know, just sharing your experiences here. And if you're watching the recording, drop some comments and I'll get back to you guys. And if you did find this message of value, or you know anybody in your life who struggles with perpetual positivity and you'd like more of a soul connection with them, I'd invite you to share it with them. I'd be forever grateful to get into the minds and hearts of other beautiful souls just like yourselves. So my final message to you, as usual, is really just to go out there and make sure you're honoring your authenticity. That means the full spectrum of who you are and what you feel, right? And to deepen your intimacy, have the courage to share your depth with those who you trust, right? Those around you. And if you don't feel like you trust anybody, like, you need to build the muscle, right? You need to have the courage to put yourself out there a little bit and share more to establish and build that trust, okay? And lastly, to contribute your gifts meaningfully and purposefully. It's really important to know your gifts, to know what value you contribute to the world, and tap into what authentically inspires you and share that. That is your pathway to being free to be all of who you are and fulfilled by the impact that you make uniquely. All right, so that's my message. Thanks again to all of you beautiful souls, and I can't wait to see you guys soon. Much love.